We will now focus on ocean carbon dynamics. From this, we will also move on to Arctic region specifically. What are all the physical and biological factors that are involved in the ocean carbon dynamics? These physical and biological factors generally regulate the absorption, retention and the release of carbon dioxide. They influences the climate over different time scales. And what are the different carbon forms that are involved? One is the dissolved organic carbon, which is DOC, then dissolved inorganic carbon. So there are the major two species. Then we have particulate organic carbon, carbon dioxide interacting with seawater, which produces carbonic acid and transition into bicarbonate and carbonate anion. So these are all the various carbon forms that are involved in the ocean or the aqueous conditions. Then what is the potential climate change solutions? These actually stabilize the carbon by absorbing anthropogenic CO2. That is, ocean basically absorbs a lot of anthropogenic carbon dioxide. These risks include the increased ocean acidity, but one way the carbon dioxide is removed is a good thing, but that when the carbon dioxide enters the ocean, it actually leads to ocean acidification. So one good thing leads to one bad thing. And there is concern about ecological effects and marine life that we had seen in the earlier modules when we studied about the ocean acidification. So there are the biochemical processes which are actually happening. The first one is the carbonate anion ion concentration. So here the carbon dioxide combination of carbon dioxide and water is the major reaction that is happening. This yields bicarbonate ion, and this also leads to higher carbon dioxide reabsorption. So this is leading to the greater transformation into bicarbonate ions, which contributes to ocean acidification. So this is when we talk about carbonate ion as a CO3 2 minus ion that is involved. Then carbon sink contribution, what are the biochemical processes involved is basically the land biosphere and the ocean absorb around 50% of anthropogenic carbon. So this is a very good sink of removal of carbon dioxide. The residual 5% indicates budget imbalance, so that we can ignore. Land and ocean sinks capture around 25% of our anthropogenic emissions. We can mitigate global warming and climate change by planting a lot of trees. So that is what if we can create a large carbon sink, then we may absorb lots of carbon dioxide. So there are various models that are used to study the organic carbon recycling. One is the biogeochemical model. So here they simulate the cycling of organic carbon nutrients and the greenhouse gases in Arctic soil, waters and sediments. So this is one model. Another one is the microbial model. So here it predicts the microbial community composition and activity in response to changes in organic carbon availability and environmental conditions. So this is a second model which people use. The third one is the climate model. It incorporates organic carbon cycling into assess its impact on Arctic climate feedback and future climate change scenarios. So these are all some of the models people use to study how the organic carbon or carbon recycling is affecting the Arctic region. So why Arctic region is critical in the global carbon cycle? Because even though when we talk about the global carbon cycle, so what is the contribution of one particular ocean, which is the Arctic Ocean? Here, the carbon exchange between the oceans, atmosphere, earth and the seafloor significantly regulates the atmospheric CO2 levels, impacting the climate and ecosystem. This we have already seen. Photosynthesis by phytoplanktons use carbon and oxygen cycles and also nitrogen and phosphorus cycles. So this collectively affect the overall oceanic carbon dynamics. Due to the high sensitivity to climate change and significant environmental shift, such an extensive ice melting and temperature fluctuations, Arctic Ocean affects the carbon cycle, because we have earlier seen about the Arctic amplification. Because of the climate change, the temperature in the Arctic Arctic region increases, so that leads to ice melt. When the ice melts, they get into oceans. So in the overall process, the carbon absorption is affected because there is a change in the water in the Arctic Ocean. So moreover, the colder Arctic sea surface water significantly contributes to carbon sequestration. That means when the temperatures are low, only at the surface the carbon dioxide can be absorbed. So what are the major carbon cycle in the Arctic? One is the permafrost. Permafrost thawing releases lots of carbon dioxide and methane. This cannot be monitored by satellite, but by borehole monitoring network only we can actually study this particular process. Rivers, water bodies and sea. Basically here in the rivers and water bodies, carbon dioxide dissolution takes place. Sediment formation is also involved. Methane hydrates can be formed and increased marine productivity, because when there is more carbon dioxide in the water, phytoplankton actually uses them and they produce lots of photosynthesis. And in the case of terrestrial plants, photosynthesis and respiration almost cancel each other. So net carbonate balance are very small, and the only difference is the forest fires. Forest fire produces lots of carbon dioxide. In the atmosphere, basically the ocean acidification is the major problem. So when the carbon dioxide is getting into the ocean, that leads to ocean acidification. And in the soils, what is the major carbon cycle is the methanogenesis and decay of dead organic matters. So we will now focus on mainly the organic carbon recycling. So the key components are basically decomposition, microbial activity and carbon sequestration. These are all the major reactions. How do they affect the Arctic region? One is the permafrost thaw. This releases basically the stored organic carbon in the form of carbon dioxide and methane. And the microbial activity also increases due to the increase in the temperature and accelerated decomposition. The microbial activity increases, which releases more carbon dioxide. And we also know the impact of greenhouse gases, because the carbon dioxide and methane released from the anthropogenic activities are also materials that are being released from the decomposition of organic matter. All these things contribute to greenhouse gas effect. So how much of the carbon stock is actually present in the permafrost? It is expected, or it is anticipated, that around 1500 gigatons of carbon is actually stored or present in the permafrost, and the rate of thawing actually releases more and more carbon materials from the Arctic region. Then how do we know all these things are happening? We can use the soil sampling. So by collecting and analyzing soil sample, we can identify what are the microbial transformations that are happening in the soil. And we can also use remote sensing and laboratory experiments to find out what is the changes that are happening both in the soil and in the water and in the atmosphere. So we will move on to the importance of organic carbon recycling in the Arctic region. So the first one is the carbon sequestration. So organic carbon burial in the Arctic sediment contributes to long-term carbon storage, influencing the global carbon cycles and climate. So this is basically carbon sequestration by the sediments. The second one is the use by the ecosystems. So the microbial decomposition of organic matter fuels Arctic food webs, supporting diverse communities of organisms. So basically more and more food that is being produced may be consumed by the ecosystem that is present in the Arctic region. The next one is the methane production. The anaerobic degradation of organic carbon in Arctic soil and sediments produces methane. This is a very, very potent methane gas, though this is the negative effect. So these are all the various organic carbon cycles that exist in the Arctic region. And although Arctic region is a very huge one, we can also look at the regional areas like Arctic region and adjacent seas. What are the changes actually happening? One is a rapid acidification. There is a significant carbon sink effects, and there is a higher uptake of anthropogenic carbon dioxide, which leads to ocean acidification. The ocean, and then in the case of North Atlantic Ocean, there is a large pH decrease, and this is actually happening due to a unique buffering system, that is mixing between the acidic deep water and the less acidic surface water leads to large pH decrease. And in the case of Arctic Ocean, what are the studies people had carried out? One is major alterations in the marine carbonate system people are studying about. Then it is challenging to study the acidity and understand how this is actually happening, and how the influence of temperature, ice and fresh water affects this is also being studied by various scientists. And in the Western Arctic Ocean, people study basically the significant increase in the Western Arctic Ocean acidity that is increasing, that people are studying. The increase is up to 4 times higher than the other basins. So this region is having a very unique perspective. This aligns with rapid Arctic warming. How do we know that this is happening? That is, the sea ice reduction speeds up acidification, and also glacier melt dilutes seawater alkalinity. So these are all the two ways by which the Arctic warming is actually happening. And when we look at the deep ocean versus surface, the deep ocean acidity surpasses the surface level, because in the deep ocean acidity is pretty high. The surface dissolved carbon dioxide sinks with the organic matters, because in the top, when some material or anything that is having decomposing, that basically goes and settles at the bottom. So that releases more and more carbon dioxide. So that is the reason the surface dissolved carbon dioxide also goes to the bottom of the ocean. So that's the reason the acidity increases at the bottom. This causes the gradual bottom up ocean acidification. So this is the major problem that is happening because of the sediments are reaching the bottom of the ocean. So how do we measure these things? One is the upscaling observations or process models. By these two mechanisms, we can understand how is the bottom up things are happening and can we estimate this particular process. One advantage is we can get a detailed snapshot of carbon exchange, and the major limitation includes time restricted, that is data outages and short field campaigns are the only things which are possible. We cannot monitor it completely, and there is a limited spatial coverage only, and there is a bias from historic focus on significant carbon fluxes. So upscaling observation are having this particular limitations, but if we develop some process models, some of the advantage means we can actually do a large scale view across various decades. We can do that, but the limitation is accuracy of climate forcing, because climate forces are very difficult to predict because we don't know what happened earlier, and the representation of biogeochemical processes are very difficult, and also there is a need of detailed spatial information related to soil and vegetation. So even though bottom up estimation can be carried out, but there are some limitations.